I'm so happy to be with you today. Welcome back to the video podcast. So happy to see you. Okay, today we're talking about the biggest lie in your marriage. This is going to be fun. This one's going to be fun. Um if you haven't heard, if you've been living under a rock, I want you to go register for my free marriage workshop. Listen, here's the thing, y'all. I have been running my coaching program for 4 years. The number one thing that people say it helps them with is their relationship, and that's not the thing that they came into the program for. But it is the thing at the end of your life, you will say this on your deathbed, that the thing that mattered to you more than anything was the relationships. And because this relationship happens to be the most important, arguably, maybe second only to the relationship that you cultivate with God and with yourself, it is important. And this is going to be fun. I think the reason why people are resistant often to say that they want help with this or that they want to come to a workshop with this is because it's so easy when you've been together a while to get to this point where you're like, oh, you just like, oh, it's too much. There's too much water under the bridge. There's too much there. We've been through too much, which is exactly the reason I want to lighten it up. I want to make it fun. I want you to be able to create something beyond your wildest dreams in this relationship. And I totally believe it's possible. So edwadsworthcoaching.com/marriage. Go sign up. Today we're going to talk about the biggest lie in your marriage. And I would love to know, do you know what this lie is? Does anybody think you already know what this lie is? This one is so funny to me because especially my community, which tends to be believers, Christians, we say this is what we want. This is what we strive for in relationships. But our actions say the opposite. So does anybody have a guess what this is? Because I'm going to tell you. But I do find it kind of fascinating that we say this, like we would all say this. And here's what we say. Here's the lie. We say that we want a relationship based on what kind of love? Everybody tell me in the chat, what kind of love do you say you want a relationship based on this kind of love? The scriptures might call it agape love, but we often call it something that starts with a U. Anybody? We often say unconditional love. Don't we say this? Don't we vow this? Don't we take a vow for this? We say this, and then we design relationships. We design our own contentment, satisfaction, fulfillment in the relationship based on what? A whole host of conditions. This cracks me up. I mean, it cracks me up, and I do it too. We all do it. So I want you to think about, if you're just listening, but if you're on live, I want you to tell me, what are some of the conditions? I mean, you wouldn't say this. You wouldn't say, no, I don't love him more if he does this. You wouldn't say this is conditions, but this is how you live. So I just jotted down a few. Here are a few of the conditions that we give this most blessed of relationships. And you can tell me if you think this is true or not, but this is a few that I wrote down. What he says, how he says it. Man, I'm a how he says it kind of person. Do I have any other how he says it? It's not what you said, it's how you said it. Even for me, it can sometimes be, it's how you looked at me. It's how, it's like all the body language, right? What are some of your conditions? How he helps around the house or how he doesn't. Maybe for you, it's what he wears. I saw this thing yesterday on Instagram. I died laughing. I laughed for so long I could not contain myself because it was like this person had some M&Ms and it was normal. It said the caption was normal people eating M&Ms, and the person was just eating M&Ms. And then the next one was like every dad eating M&Ms. And it showed a guy like shaking them in his hands in different positions, and he would shake them before he ate them. I'm like, that is exactly how my husband eats peanuts. So I put how he eats peanuts on the list. Does he do the shake thing that drives you crazy? Maybe the condition is how he breathes. If you've been married for more than 20 years, it could be it's just how he breathes. Like, why do you have to breathe like that? We have so many conditions, you guys, and we say that we don't, and we're lying. And I make kind of light of it because we have so many conditions. It's not just a few conditions. We have conditions a mile long, like a mile long list of conditions. The list literally goes on forever. Am I right or am I right? So I want to get honest with you for a minute because it is kind of funny and we all kind of have a list like this of conditions, but also I want you to think to yourself, like, how over time does it erode your relationship? Because we literally do have this list of conditions. If he does this, if he doesn't do this. But here's what I want to show you. I want to show you how corrosive this can be over time. But I also want to show you something really important. What you have just done is put conditions, now listen to me closely, on when you will experience love. You have conditioned the way you will experience love. I will only experience it if he does this. If he does this, then I will let myself experience unconditional love. If he acts this way, if he says these words, if he wears this thing, if he breathes this way. What you've done is you have put conditions on the amount of love you are willing to experience. You've conditioned it, which means, are you going to experience more or less? You're going to experience way less because now it has to fit into these conditions in order for you to experience it. And so what happens over time is that we just end up dying on the vine from a lack of love. Can I get an amen? Because you've decided this is how you are going to experience love if he does this and that and just this way. So now there are all these very specific conditions with which you will now experience love. So then we all end up kind of dying on the vine from lack of love, and then we blame him. And we keep telling ourselves that we want relationship with unconditional love, but we keep putting conditions on it. This was like such a mind twister for me. I'm like, oh yeah, we do keep putting a lot of conditions on it. And then we blame not just him, but then we blame our kids and we blame our boss and we blame the circumstances of life. And really, the only thing between you and unconditional love is you. You look around in your relationship and you're like, unconditional love is nowhere to be found here. But if it's what we say we want, we can experience it any time we want. And I've said this before, and I'll say this again. If you look at the science of unconditional love, if you look at the science of like true unconditional love, like that agape love that the scriptures talks about, if you look at the science of what your body does when you feel that, your body loves to operate from this. Your body heals itself. Your body vibrates at a level that is just magnetizing. Everything you do feels joyful, easy. Your big open heart and the way you experience the world is like a magical way to experience the world. But we have decided not to experience it that way and experience love anytime we want and create it for ourselves and exude this sort of magnetic, attractive way of being in the world where we just accept the love that God has given for us and we become like a conduit of that love everywhere we go, and we don't put conditions on it and we just decide I can create this whenever I want. And instead, we say, no, it has to be these conditions. And we're lying to ourselves if we say we believe in this unconditional love, and yet we don't practice it for ourselves. Now, some of you are like, you think you're putting the condition on him, but what you're actually doing is putting the condition on how you will experience love and how often. So you have this loving God who made you from love, for love, to love. And yet we don't experience that nearly as often in our lives as we want because we have so many conditions. I have to be talked to this way. I have to be treated this way. I have to do this thing. And the truth of it is, even if he like can somehow find a way to meet all the conditions of love, you still don't have unconditional love. You have a transaction. You have something that doesn't even feel like love. It feels like keeping score. It feels like counting beans, right? And if we're really truthful, this kind of love is not what we want for our daughters and sons. When you're sitting there thinking to yourself, like, oh, I hope my daughter finds this relationship that she puts all of these conditions on, that she will only experience love if all of these conditions are met. No, we want them to learn how to experience unconditional love whenever they want. We want them to have that unconditional love that we say we want. And yet, so much of what we're doing and how we're thinking is not creating that. It's not what we want for ourselves. It's not what we want for our kids. It's not what we want for our spouse. And we think we're putting the conditions on them, but we're really conditioning ourselves. We're putting limits on the amount of love we are experiencing. So what if, in order to experience it like you say you want, what if you have to be willing to go first and give the thing you're wanting instead? Just try it. Try bringing your loving, joyful, contented, and satisfied self to this relationship and see what happens. Instead of coming with this sort of, well, if you can make me happy, if you can fulfill these conditions, what if you brought your contented, joyful, loving, satisfied, playful self to this relationship? What would happen? So if you're tired of this lack of love, tired of feeling like you're on opposite teams, you can stop that anytime. You can create love. We're going to talk about ways that you can do that, real specific ways that you can do that. But honestly, it's basically just a big mindset shift. It's deciding to wear different glasses. It's deciding to go, oh, I have been creating conditions for how I'm experiencing love. And what if I just decided to experience it all the time, as much as I want, unlimited amounts every day? It's crazy what will change in your life when you do this. You don't even need the other person to cooperate. So get yourself to the workshop, ediewadsworthcoaching.com/marriage, and let's create way more of it. Let's create so much unconditional love. Let's take away all the conditions that we have for experiencing it. Nobody else has to show up a certain way. Nobody else has to do a certain thing. It's just the privilege of my life to get to show up and practice creating and letting something flow through me that feels like magic. Like, what an honor for me that I get to create for me. And then the overflow of that just leaches out into every part of my life. This is so profound. So stop telling the lie to yourself that you want unconditional love when you keep putting conditions on it. You keep putting conditions and limiting yourself from feeling love. Don't do that. Allow it to flow. Open up your big heart. Decide this is how you show up as your big, powerful, nurturing, loving, contented, satisfied self. Okay. I can't wait to see you next Tuesday. It's 1 week from today, y'all. 1 week from today. If you've already registered, send the link to your friends. Get them there. Listen, this is going to be good for people who even aren't married. And I will say this, I'm going to do a whole other post about this, but if you're on the verge of losing your relationship, come to this workshop. Just come, just for yourself, to learn how to create more love in your own life, no matter what's happening in that relationship. Just come to the workshop. I promise you, life-changing. Okay,